Dan, here's the thing. We can be furious about it. You know, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, not paying anything or almost nothing in federal taxes, but they didn't do anything illegal. Is this about our tax system and how we need to change it?
Yeah, it clearly is about the tax system. It takes you back to 2017. One of the things that the Trump administration was very focused on was tax reform. But we know in hindsight now, there was nothing that resembled reform. Really what it was a corporate tax cut and a tax cut for people like the ones that we're talking about right here. They borrowed $1.5 trillion from the future, and they basically handed it to corporations. And when you think about how our tax system is structured, it benefits asset holders. So if corporates, and these people are the CEOs of some of the biggest companies in America, right, have lower taxes, they have higher margins, they are making more money, and they're not being taxed on it. So it really is about the system, Steph.
Josh, this is a system clearly designed for the rich. It's why tax lawyers are among the highest paid out there. If you want to make it more equitable, what's the first thing to change?
Well, if you have a problem with the level of wealth creation that we've seen for these top 25 billionaires, you're not going to ever be able to address it through income tax because that is not the source of their wealth. They don't make money from wages the way almost everyone else in the country makes money. They make money based on the growth of their assets. And then rather than selling those assets and realizing a taxable gain, they just borrow money against them. So they're never taxed on the growth of their wealth. Let's say it's stock prices or real estate holdings, but they can pay their living expenses because they're securitizing those assets and getting cash from banks, from private equity firms, whoever wants to lend to them. So probably if you really wanted to do something about it, you would have to introduce a wealth tax, not a higher income tax rate. It wouldn't have any effect. Here's the problem with that. How do you tax somebody on an unrealized gain? So you tax somebody on the growth of their shares going up 20% last year, right? Let's say their shares fall 50% the next year. Do you owe them the money back? Right? Because now they have an unrealized loss. So how do you really do that? You probably can't. The other thing is wealth tax is unpopular among most Americans. Even people who are solidly middle class don't like the idea of success being punished. And that's why it hasn't happened yet. So that's the issue that we're really facing. And I don't think it gets solved anytime soon.
All right, Michael, I want to switch gears a bit because we just got the results of the $1,400 stimulus checks. And it's extraordinary. Food shortages, financial instability, mental health issues plummeted after Americans got the checks. It's incredible how well stimulus payments worked. You tried guaranteed income, universal basic income in Stockton. Does this make the argument that we need UBI, that stimulus payments work on a national level?
Yeah, it makes absolutely no sense to me why we wouldn't want to not have food shortages, or why would we want to have poverty, or why we want to have people stressed and anxious, particularly when a report just came out today about how those who are, quote unquote, the most successful pay little to nothing in the income taxes that gives us roads, that gives us schools, that gives us libraries, that gives us police officers and firemen. And I think to the point raised by the previous question as well, the issue is definitely systemic. We have an economy that works for one group of people extraordinarily well, where even during a global pandemic, these folks got richer and richer to amass even more billions, and works terribly for the millions and millions of many who create the labor that generates the wealth and the unrealized gains that these folks have anyway. So I think we have to have a guaranteed income. And it sounds to me that some form of wealth tax, and like everything else, if you sit down and figure out the details, is the way to go to help ask the million-dollar questions in terms of how do we pay for it.
Dan, people in the business world often scoff at the idea of universal basic income. Why should we give people money for nothing? But you said it before. The government gives businesses tons and tons of free money. Could the success of stimulus payments start to change people's minds about UBI? Those stimulus payments impact our economy in a good way.
Yeah, it should, Steph. When you think back to the global financial crisis, right? So the government socialized losses of some of the biggest businesses in this country. And what did we do? We kept crises policies, easy monetary policies in place for years and years and years. And actually, you could say that where interest rates are right now is actually a byproduct of what we did in the financial crisis. So here we are, we're constantly socializing losses. I think at some point, when you think about some of the stimulus from the CARES Act, it made the case for Mayor Tubbs in the experiment that he ran in his city, why there should be some, I think, continuance of those policies that helped some of the most needy people in our country.
Josh, the vaccine rollout has been extraordinarily successful. It's been a long 14 months, but we are snapping back in a big way. Every day we hear about job openings. We talk to businesses that say they can't find workers. We know there is pressure on states to end the enhanced unemployment benefit. Half of our states are already doing it. Should the government use the money elsewhere since we have snapped back so quickly?
I think the point will be moot in 2 months. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. By September, we'll see all of these extraordinary benefits start to wind down, and there will be a greater push on the part of people who had the luxury to not have to look for a job to go out there and look for one. The good news is we saw job openings rise by 1 million job openings month over month. In data that we got yesterday. So there is plenty of room for people to come back to the workforce when these things run down. I don't think it's worth debating at this time. What I do think is important, to go back to that last point I want to make very quickly, is just this idea that you're never going to have income equality. What you should have is equality of opportunity. And so I don't know that we need to do UBI, but I do think, for example, we should absolutely have preschool be a universal, like a basic good that everyone should have access to. Why should some kids start 100 yards behind the starting line at 5 years old? It's the dumbest thing on earth. If we're serious about this country being competitive in the future, then we should at least be doing that for young children who can't decide what family they're going to be born into. That shouldn't determine the entire course of their life. I also don't have a problem with paying for college, although college itself should not be the thing that decides whether or not you can have a middle-class existence. So I do believe we should be working on that. I don't like the idea of just randomly mailing checks to everyone. I don't think it's as effective as some of the types of programs that I'm talking about can be. But clearly, we learned a lot in this recession, which is people don't have to be tortured every time the economy turns down. We have a lot of wherewithal to help the people who need it.
Okay, well, the economy is coming back, Dan. Every day we keep hearing from small businesses that are saying they can't find workers. We keep hearing it from every time you go out to eat. A restaurant owner says, I can't get any workers. People are home. Here's what I don't get. Why don't restaurants have the money? Restaurants got 2 rounds of PPP. That's forgivable loans. And they just got $28 billion from the government in the American Rescue Plan. Why can't restaurants use that money to pay workers more? You're worried that people are getting paid so much money at home? Offer them more money. They'll come to work. These restaurants have the money.
Yeah, I think it's purely anecdotal from what I'm seeing here in New York City, and I talk to a lot of people in the business. I mean, they're doing exactly that stuff, but there is, there's a whole host of just disconnects that still exist about the ability for people to travel to jobs or what they're willing to do for those sorts of things. So, I think the restaurants, I'm going to give them a pass. I think there's a lot of other big businesses that I'd probably focus more who received a lot of that aid, who actually had the wherewithal to keep people employed and really try to get people back to work. So I think small businesses, I am fully in support to continue a lot of those programs. I know even as this unemployment, like Josh just mentioned, these expanded unemployment checks are going to run out. I think you're going to see that kind of fix itself over the next couple of months.
Michael, can businesses fix this issue and just pay more? We keep hearing people complain about individuals getting too much support, and we're ignoring all the support businesses got. They got the money to pay.
No, Stephanie, we complain about some individuals getting so much support because we started this segment talking about how 25 richest people have a lot of support and have a lot of money, and that some people feel like they still can't be taxed on those unrealized gains. So I think absolutely
it's too complicated to tax them.
But there's also studies from this past year when we're giving $600 a week from Yale.
What if I tax you on how much your house went up in value?
I'm sorry, sir. I'm finishing the question Stephanie asked. So when we were giving people $600 a week and unemployment benefits, studies have shown that had no impact on labor market. But we're in the midst of a pandemic. We're coming back from a pandemic. It's going to take people time to go back to work. And I think it's also about the fact that for the first time, Workers have agency. People can choose whether they want to go to jobs that are unsafe, where they're treated rudely, where they're not often tipped well, where they don't have regular schedules to plan out their lives. I think it's, again, completely ridiculous and goes to the point that in this country, we don't value everyone the same. And I actually agree with the point raised earlier about equality of opportunity. And we know that poverty and economic insecurity robs people of the opportunity to plan, to have agency, to eat, to be healthy, to not be stressed, et cetera. And I think in addition to universal preschool, in addition to a robust sort of education system, universal health care, there has to be an income floor, because if we could afford for billionaires to become multi-century billionaires during the pandemic, we can afford at least an income floor for all Americans.